Welcome to another of my online video tutorial series. At the end of this video, you should be able to sketch or generate a roof framework for a floor plan. There's several factors to be considered when sketching a roof, but before we get into that, it's important that we understand the components. We know the components of a roof. Here, this is a ridge board, and a ridge board is normally not normally placed along the longer side of the roof. So we have one ridge board here, another ridge board here. Ridge board is formed. It's pretty much at the point where two hip rafters meet. This is a hip rafter, and hip rafter is always formed at the corner of an external wall. Here we have a valley rafter, and valley rafter is a rafter that is formed at the corner of two internal walls. On this side here we have our fascia board, and fascia board is the piece of board that covers the edge of the rafters. Here we have a series of rafters. Here in, what is this, green, we have the rafters, and rafters should always be perpendicular to the fascia board and their ridge. The full length rafters, we have full length rafters and we have short rafters. The full length rafters normally run from the ridge board down to the fascia board. The jack rafters, these are referred to as common rafters, the full length ones. The shorter ones are referred to as jack rafters. And jack rafters normally run from the fascia board up to the hip rafters. And these are of varying length. Very important. The dimension for rafters. Rafters are normally at 150 by 150 by 50 millimeters, and they are placed at 600 millimeters center to center. Okay, fascia board is normally 25 millimeter thick by 225 millimeters wide. The ridge board is typically 200 millimeters by 50 millimeters. For us to fully understand roof and be able to generate any roof from any shape, wall, outline, it's important that we understand some rules or some guidelines. Some of these guidelines are one, all angles formed by the external wall plate must be bisected. Very important. What do we mean by that? Say here is a rafter, and so the angle that is formed here, this must be bisected. If it's at 90-degree angle, we typically draw it at 45. But it is typically drawn at 45. Here again we have another roof outline here. These are drawn at 45 degrees. All right. In cases where the roof is not rectangular, which is in most cases, we normally bisect the angle that is formed. So the rafter is drawn at the midpoint between the angle that is formed, like here. Here at this external edge, this one is drawn at right angle. Here, this is an internal corner. Again, we bisect this half of the external angle. That's the first rule. It's important to note also that only one member is drawn from any one corner. And if you notice on these sketches, from each corner, it's only one member that is drawn from each corner. Very important. Only one member. Rule number 3. Hips are formed where the wall plate or the fascia board creates an external corner. So a hip is formed there. So on the drawing we have hip and we have valley. So here these are hip, all hips. These are valley. Valleys are formed where the internal corners meet. Valleys are formed where an internal corner is formed by two plates. Yes. Rafters are always at 90 degrees to the wall plate or fascia board. By that we mean here is the fascia board or the wall plate. The rafters must always be drawn at right angle to that. Always straight. Very important. Next rule states that ridge is always level and parallel to external walls. And here we have our ridge board, one ridge board here, another ridge board here, or third ridge board. And if you notice, the ridge board is parallel to this wall or plate. It's also parallel to this wall and that plate. In like manner, it's parallel to the wall and plate on that side also. Very important. 7th rule. Always draw the ridge line first. And this rule applies to when you're generating your roof outline. The first thing to do is to draw your ridge lines first. Alright? So for example, and here we have some examples which we will be doing. Alright? We'll be doing these. So the first thing, always draw our ridge line first. And of great importance, the ridge line must be drawn along the longer side. Alright? Along the longer side. Also, always draw a series of rectangles. Yeah? So when we get into drawing the roof, you will see what this means. So the first thing is to draw the ridge line first here, and the ridge line is normally in the middle of the distance of the span. Yeah, in the span. So for that one, I will draw my ridge line first here. I would also draw my ridge line to ridge line. Here I would also draw my ridge line here and my ridge line here. Ridge line here. Ridge line here. Be that this one is at an angle, I would first bisect this, bisect that to get the ridge line point, then I'll draw that. So we draw our ridge lines first. The next step, in order to generate the roof, we always draw the largest, always draw a series of rectangle. Yeah? So, and next, draw the largest possible rectangle first. Alright? Next rule states that we are to create a complete rectangle hip roof from each rectangle. Yeah? And a complete rectangle hip roof, a complete rectangular hip roof from each rectangle is like this. So we draw this first, then we draw these at 45 degrees. As the rule states, we must draw these at 45 degrees. Yeah, and at the point where both hip meets, that is our point, our ridge point. Alright, so this would be the outline for that. Next rule states that common rafters are parallel to both ridge board and fascia board. Again, I mentioned that before. Start drawing rafters at the point where hip rafters meet the ridge board. By that we mean once you have outlined the rafter, you start drawing outline the framework for the rafter, that includes the ridge board, the hip rafters, and the ridge board. We would then draw our first common rafter. Then we would space these 600 millimeters apart on center. So start here at this point. On the other slope side, we also start here, then measure our way out to the end. Very important. All right. So that is basically that. Once we apply these rules, we should be good. So let us start creating these roofs. All right. Another rule that we need to be mindful of is that we only brighten up every hip rafter must be generated from a corner, yeah, from one here, one there, one there, one here, and it must be at right angle. All right. So let us start with probably one of our most basic roof framework. All right. Let us start with this one. So the first rule says that this must be drawn at 45 degrees. That's at 45 degrees. This is at 45 degrees. This is at 45 degrees. That's at 45 degrees. At the point where both of them meet, that section becomes our ridge. So we would brighten up all of that to get the roof outline. All right. Next, onto this one. Again, same principle applies. Wherein we all angle formed by the external wall plate must be bisected. Only one member is drawn from any corner. Hip is formed where the wall plates create an external angle. Valleys are formed where an internal corner is formed by two plates. All right. So for here, again, we must create a rectangle as the first step. So we create one rectangle there. We can go ahead and create another rectangle here. So these are what will be used to generate our roof, right? So we have one rafter here. Remember, we must draw these at 45 degrees. So the first one being drawn at 45 degrees. Here we draw this one, and we are gonna just draw this one for drawing's sake, because the rule states that for each rectangle we must have a complete roof outline like this. Even though we know that this wasn't generated from a corner, I'm still gonna draw it. All right. This one also, we draw this at 45. So this now would be our complete one right here. By virtue of elimination, next thing, this hip is always, this one is always parallel to this one in most cases, always parallel. So we draw this parallel. And of course, again, when we generate the angle here, this is external angle, this would automatically falls there. So for this side we have that. All right. Now let's come on this side. Again, we draw 45 here, 45. Again, we know that once there is no corner here, we pretty much don't really need to draw it. But there are cases where we will need to draw it when a number of roofs are combined. All right. So this should be brightened, that should be brightened. This is drawn from a corner, we draw that. Let's just draw this for drawing's sake. This angle is also drawn at 45. All right. Now, one other important principle is that any line that is not generated from a corner must be eliminated, or must be erased or removed. Here is our ridge line. This comes from here, that comes from that point. We draw this here. And this has not been generated from any corner, so we can ignore that one. Alright, and this is pretty much the outline for the roof, which is similar to what we have here. This is that. Alright, how do we go about generating a roof like this? Same principle applies. The first rule is to draw our generate our ridge line first, then draw these at 45, 45, 45, 45, and this should be drawn at 45 too, but we know that we're not gonna want that. Here is drawn at 45, here at 45. This must be bisector of this also, that right there. And as the rule states, any side that is not drawn from a corner should be eliminated. Alright, so in essence that this would form right here, that would have been right there. We would brighten up this, that also, and that one. Alright, that would have been that. No, it's not an interesting one. Alright, this one we have to be keen here. Again, the same principle applies. I'm gonna break this up into a rectangle. This is one rectangle, and this is another four-sided figure. Again, I draw this at 45 degrees, 45, imaginary 45, imaginary 45. Remember, we must draw these, we must create this basic hip roof from every section as best as practical. All right, so we have that. So we know that this comes from here. This angle also is bisected. All right, and this here, have that there. So, and this should be brighten up. Here should be brighten up. No, here, depending on how this is set up, this can be like that. All right, and then that. Yeah. So we normally remove the excess there. Let us move on to another type of roof. Look at this one. Same principle applies. It's important to note that the excess here would have been the imaginary line here. We always cut off the excess. All right, anything that is not generated from a corner, that portion is removed. All right, let us look at this one now. This one's a little bit more complex. The rule says that we are to draw the largest possible rectangle first, and then the smaller one. So here we from this we can get the largest possible rectangle here from this point. That's one rule. The other rule states that we must draw the ridge along the longer side in the middle. So for that, I generate that. So first I create this imaginary rectangle, then I draw this at 45, this at 45 degrees, this at 45, that's at 45 degree also. Yeah. Oh, before that, I probably should have drawn my ridge line first. So this is my ridge line. This is my ridge line. All right, ridge line, ridge line, ridge line, ridge line, ridge line, ridge line. All right, ridge line. Next step, we must bring our valley. Oh, let's draw here. This is drawn at 45. This is also drawn at 45. That at 45. 45 is half of 90, by the way, and this is drawn there. So this cuts that right there. This cuts that right there. Ridge right there. All right. So that would cut that right there. this would have been our ridge right here. This would have been, this come from a corner, so we brighten up that. Now this rafter would extend out a little bit more, so we would stop that right there. We wouldn't brighten up this excess right here. We wouldn't brighten this up. So this little piece right here is another important part which we need to be mindful of. This stops here, but this ridge extends out a little bit more. So this would stop right there. This would not be, we would not draw this one because this is not generated from any corner. However, this angle must be drawn here. Yeah. So, and this must be brightened up from here to here. Must be brightened up. The excess here must be left pale. And this would automatically falls in the middle of this. Very important. Oh, my bad. I should have drawn this first. This should have been generated first. So here would not be a part of it. Alright. This would brighten up this section also. That. So that is basically how, and we would not see, this section should be pale. This should be pale also. And that's basically the outline for a roof which looks as complicated as that. Alright, very important.